Hello, chemists. Michele Glass here. I know you don't believe me, but chapter 2 will come to an end very, very soon. There is a lot of information here. I know that. So just make sure you're looking through the information, and when you have questions, you're contacting me. Okay, we left off with a discussion of organic molecules, carbon, hydrogen based. And we said they can be macromolecules because they're super big. And they're derived from cells, right? Cells make these. So for us, we're getting them by eating food, which is plant or animals or fungi. So we're eating other cells, and then we're breaking them down and using them to build our own macromolecules, right? And there's 4 categories. So we're going to be going through carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. Actually, carbohydrates, lipids, and then proteins, and then nucleic acids. For each macromolecule, you need to know 3 things. You need to be able to describe the structure, give examples, and describe the function of that molecule in the cell. Let us start with carbohydrates. All right, y'all, so we're getting started here with our carbohydrate. Remember, let's talk about structure. So carbohydrates are going to be made from carbon, they're going to be made from hydrogen, and they're going to be made from oxygen. And what we'll see is we have about the same amount of carbon and oxygen, and then like 2 times the amount of hydrogen. So we can say we have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a ratio of 1 to 2 to 1. What we'll see here also is that our carbohydrate has a monomer. That's, remember, our building block, which is called a monosaccharide. So the term saccharide means sugar. And so a monomer for carbohydrate is a single or simple sugar. Examples of that would be glucose, fructose, and galactose. We often see that our sugar shape will be in the form of a ring. So this would represent a 6-carbon sugar where each point is a carbon. And then sometimes we will see a 5-carbon sugar, and it would have a ring structure that looks like this. Now this is super simplified. We're just representing the carbons. We don't have the hydrogen or the oxygen represented in that particular picture. If the monomer is a monosaccharide, a single sugar, we see that you can link 2 sugars together to make what's called a disaccharide. And examples here would be sucrose, lactose, and maltose would be a few examples of disaccharides, 2 sugars together. And then we have what are called polysaccharides. We know this prefix poly means many. So a polysaccharide is a really big carbohydrate, right? And here, our bodies, you'll see glycogen, and we will eat starch, and we will also eat cellulose. Now, what are the jobs for all of these carbohydrates? We have really 2 major jobs, and one would be fuel to make ATP. ATP is a molecule that we've talked about a little bit already. We'll talk about it again in a few videos. It shows up throughout the whole course, actually. So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. And this is our way that we store energy. This is our energy molecule. So if a process in the body requires energy, it's going to require ATP. If a process in the body makes energy, it's going to make ATP. So glucose is like the fuel, right? So just like you burn wood and then given off from that is the energy of heat and light, we burn glucose and giving off of that energy is the chemical energy ATP. Now, all cells use glucose. So this glucose molecule is really like our primary source for ATP in the body. Sucrose is table sugar. Lactose is milk sugar. Maltose is malt sugar. When we eat those disaccharides, we break them down into glucose and then use that glucose to make ATP. And then what we'll see is like only neurons and red blood cells only use glucose. So sometimes if we're like asleep and not eating glucose, then our body has to go through different activities to reserve that glucose for the red blood cells and the neurons. And what we'll see is the rest of your cells will use a lipid. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The second important function that we see in the body is cell structure. I'm going to actually write in here cell membrane structure. So we'll see carbohydrates compare with lipids that we're going to talk about in a minute and make glycolipids that are going to be important in cell membrane structure. Carbohydrates can pair with proteins that we're going to talk about soon and form what are called glycoproteins. And those are important in cell membrane structure. When we go to our examples again, remember glucose is like that primary source that our cells, particularly neurons and red blood cells, use to make ATP. When we have extra glucose, we can store that as glycogen. So this is stored glucose. And we see this in our bodies, in our skeletal muscle. It's not something that we're really eating. We're not really eating glycogen when we eat meat. We're getting glucose, again, from plant sources, primarily the sucrose, lactose. Lactose would be milk sugar, so that would be coming from an animal source. Starch is how plants store glucose. So this can be an important part of our diet. So when we're eating starch, so things like corn, potatoes, wheat, rice, we're able then to break that down into a bunch of glucose molecules. And cellulose is part of the plant cell wall. Animal cells don't have cell walls, but plants do. And that cellulose then acts as fiber for our bodies. It's not something that our bodies can break down. When we look at carbohydrates and we look at the names, we very often see an OSE ending. So this is a clue. Anytime you have a molecule with an OSE ending, you should just assume it's a carbohydrate. Notice not every single carbohydrate, glycogen, for instance, and starch, for instance, don't have the OSE ending, but anything with an OSE ending is going to be a carbohydrate. Okay, so as we talked about the carbohydrates, we talked about the structure, we talked about some examples, and we talked about functions. Stay tuned for our video on lipids, and as always, take care of yourselves and each other.